There we go. All right, so we're in Deuteronomy chapter 14. Again, Moses is giving his final instructions. It's just a few weeks before he's going to pass away at 120. He's not permitted to go into the land, and so he's given, throughout the book of Deuteronomy, really a recap of what they've gone through, and what have they been instructed by God to do when this, group of individuals, all descendants from Jacob, whose God changed his name to Israel. What are they to do in this land that God has given them? That they don't get the authority to just wing it. He's telling them these are all the ways in which you will structure your society, because it's really God's society. It's the people he plucked up out of slavery. He's giving them a land. And they are going to have to govern themselves according to his terms in order to remain there. It's very much a conditional covenant. So, starts off verse 1. Ye are the children of the Lord, Lord, all caps, Jehovah is the Hebrew word behind that. You're the children of Jehovah, your God. We're God's, Elohim. It's actually a plural. So the gods, that can be a general term used to describe, anyone's gods. But the God of Israel is Jehovah, the one true and living God. So why does he start with that? He's claiming ownership. You are my people. You are my children, and my children will govern themselves a certain way. That's what's going to happen. So he's going to, tell them what they should and should not do, as opposed to all the native nations around them that have their own customs and practices. And he's really going to go out of his way to clarify that some of them you are absolutely not to participate in. So, ye shall not cut yourselves, nor make any baldness between your eyes for the dead. Now, what exactly the custom was among the nations in Canaan when somebody died? Where were they cutting themselves? What areas were they shaving? Were their eyebrows or hair? I don't specifically know. But this is written broad enough about whatever pattern you see them doing in their grief for the dead, you don't follow it, right? Don't cut yourself. Don't make any baldness. There's allusions later on in 1 Kings when Elijah's going up against the prophets of Baal, and they're trying to call on Baal and have him to respond. One of the ways they're trying to entice him to do something is to cut themselves with lances. And so this idea of self-mutilation and scarring in order to have some kind of acknowledgement of calling on your God or for grief over the dead, he says these are not practices for you to follow. Why? Verse 2, for thou art a holy people. So I look up here in the Strong's, see what the word holy there is. You got sacred, sacred, set apart, right? God has set them apart as a people unto the Lord himself. So if you are going to be set apart to serving him, you've got to do things that please him. And the Lord hath chosen thee. Chosen. So the Lord has selected them to be a peculiar people, not peculiar as in weird or strange. We'd probably say particular. That and the root meaning behind the word here is to shut up. What will you go and store in the most extensive vault in the bank, right? The good stuff, right? That's where the jewels, things that are favored. They're not going to leave those out on the lawn. So the thing that is valuable treasure. That's how he's describing this people that I've made you. I've chosen you. You were valuable to me above all the nations that are upon the earth. So out of all all the nations, he chose you to be his children. And so because you're wholly set apart for my purposes, there are some things that you have to do that make you different from the world. Now, again, we are talking to the literal descendants of Jacob in this time, in this nation. This is how they're to govern themselves. Don't get confused and just try to pluck these verses out and say, well, this applies to us as Gentiles in the New Testament age. It doesn't. I'll just give you the getaway at the beginning. It doesn't. And there are other verses we could go to establish that. But for our purposes, we are learning a historical perspective of what did God tell the Jews. And all these things are going to be pointing towards Christ. And so So we're just going to run through them, just literally see what they say. All right. So you're a holy people unto the Lord, thy God. The Lord hath chosen thee to be a peculiar people unto himself above all the nations of the earth. So because that, as a holy people, there are some things that you don't need to do. One is don't eat any abominable thing. Abominable is vile, gross, disgusting. All right. So God, who is the standard for what's right, gets to say to his people, this is some things that are disgusting and you will not eat them. As a holy set apart people, these are things you want to engage in. So he starts off with the list of things that are on the menu, right? These are the beasts which ye shall eat: the ox, the sheep, and the goat, the hart, the roebuck, and the fallow deer. Those are all types of deer. The wild goat, the pargog. Let's see what that is. Pargog. Oh, a leaper, like an antelope. The wild ox. So any kind of bovine animal that's not domesticated. And the chamois. What's that? A gazelle, right? As in lightly touching the ground. So you've got these categories: your domestic, your ox, your cows, your sheep, your goat, and then you've got these wild animals: domestic, wild. What are the categories that you can put these into of why they are acceptable? If you were to just examine their anatomy, that's what you get there in verse 6. Every beast that parteth the hoof and cleaveth the cleft into two claws and cheweth the cud among the beast, thou shalt eat. All right, so the pattern amongst all those animals is there's going to be something unique about their feet and what they eat. So one, they're all vegetarians. All right, so they're not scavengers, they're not meat eaters, they chew the cud. So the other thing is there's something about their feet and how they're split. So if you look at the foot over here on the left, this is the cow's foot. You got these two big toes, and you got a gap in there. Right? Come over here and you look, this is a sheep. Two big toes, and you got a gap. Here's your goats. Two big toes, and you got a gap. All right, and this is a wild animal. This is a deer. Two big toes, and you got a gap. Gazelle, two big toes and a gap. Two different feet. Okay, confused. No gap. This is a camel foot. So that's what we get to in verse 7 here. Nevertheless, these ye shall not eat, that chew the cud, or of them that divide the cloven hoof, as the camel, the hare, and the coney, for they chew the cud, but divide not the hoof. They are unclean unto you. So this is a test where it's got to have all the requirements. Got to have the right feet, and you got to chew the cud. So camels, they're vegetarians. But as you can see, these big old pads, there's not a division down the two. He's saying this is how you can look at the animal. If in doubt, look at their feet, and you'll know whether they're clean or unclean. I can't remember the whole list. Look at their feet. All right? So there's no division. Same thing for a rabbit's foot, hare, right? They eat grass, they chew the cud, but they don't have the right qualifications, and so they are not on the menu. Now you got to have both qualifications. So the same thing with the swine here, pig. It divideth the hoof. It's got it split. It's fine. There you go. It's got it split. But it doesn't chew the cud, right? Pigs will eat anything. It's not just limited to grass and vegetarian. So it is unclean. You shall not eat of their flesh, nor touch their dead carcass. So you could be around a live pig, you can be around a live camel, and rabbits. That's fine, but you're not allowed to eat them. And if you come across one that's dead, if you handle it, it will make you ceremonially unclean, and you'll have to go through this cleansing process. So those are your rules for your primary things that are on the menu. Either those will be found at the house or in the wild. And again, God is making this distinction. Generally, it's going to be vegetarian animals, and they're going to have these divided toed feet. So that's all the land animals. Now we're going to go deal with all the water animals, marine life. These ye shall eat of all that are in the waters, all that have fins and scales. Okay, so again, another two set requirement. Has to have fins, has to have scales. right? So, like fried catfish, they don't have scales, right? They're slimy. Um, so that would be off the menu. Things that don't have fins, shrimp, shellfish, crabs. Um, so you're that's pretty broad language, all fins and scales, but it narrows it down to just the fish that they were permitted to eat. So got to have scales, got to have fins. Anything that doesn't have both of those requirements, it's going to be unclean. Whatsoever that hath not fins and scales, you may not eat. It is unclean. Right? And that's all you get for the fish. Only two instructions there. Birds, it says generally, of all clean birds you may eat. Well, what are those? Well, rather than listing out the clean birds, it actually kind of does the opposite and it lists out all the unclean birds. These are they which you shall not eat: the eagle, the ossifrage, the osprey, the geld, the kite, the vulture after his kind, the raven after his kind, the owl, the nighthawk, the cuckoo, the hawk after his kind, the little owl, the great owl, the swan, the pelican, the gyre eagle, the cormorant, the stork, the heron, the lapwing, and the bat. Right? If I were looking for a pattern in these look like all kind of birds of prey. And so those are all off the menu. So that's the instructions there. And again, this is kind of a recap. There's more details that were given back when Moses was originally given the law in Exodus and Leviticus, and so you could go for some more information there. But that's letting you know which ones are definitely off. Finally, you've got this another category of every creeping thing that flieth is unclean to you; they shall not be eaten. If you go back to Genesis, there's patterns of marine life in one category, birds in one category, land animals in one category, and then kind of creeping things. And so, bugs, insects, generally, whatever they are, if they fly, they're not on the menu. So you know how John the Baptist had a diet of locust and wild honey, and apparently the locusts don't fly. Those particular ones, they're hoppers. Anyway, so you can get more details about that. All right, so those flying things are off the menu. Bugs that are flying are off the menu. But of all clean fowls you may eat. So I've got to figure out what that is, excluding those. The animals that could be sacrificed, turtle doves and things like that, those are definitely clean animals because there was a rule that unclean animals could not be sacrificed. All right, additional dietary rules. You should not eat of anything that dieth of itself. Right? There's some real good practical wisdom in that we know today with germs and diseases, and that something that's died on its own generally had a problem. This is not, somebody killed it and now it's available to eat. It's just something that died. You don't know why. So you found this carcass. What do you do with it? Well, as a holy people, God was, preventing them really from subjecting themselves to those kind of illnesses and eating, unknown dead things. He says you can give it to a stranger that's in your gates, someone who's not an Israelite. If they want it, fine, let them have it. You can even sell it to a stranger, to an alien, right? To a non-Israelite. Can't give it or sell it to an Israelite who's trying to break this law. That gets you in trouble. But you're not to eat anything that dies of itself. Thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God. Right? And then you have this kind of interesting expression about food that doesn't really follow the rest of it. It says, thou shalt not seethe a kid in his mother's milk. Right? So a kid's a baby lamb, baby goat. The mother's milk is just what you think. So if you've got a new baby lamb and you decide that we're going to eat this thing, you can't boil them in his mother's milk. This is one of those things where in the New Testament, where those who are being contrary to God are described as without natural affection, unmerciful, unplacable. This is one of those things that, as far as the pattern that I see, it's just not right. It's not merciful. It's something that, the mother's milk is designed to nurture and feed the little animal. and now you're using it to boil it and cook it, it's not demonstrating mercy. It's not appropriate. It ain't fitting. And so here, God is laying out this specific instruction for even how that they cook certain things, so this is not appropriate. All right. So that's really the bulk of that chapter. And then now, since we work for a freight company, we've got logistics, we've got freight, we've got transportation being considered. So the general rule in verse 22 is, "Thou shalt truly tithe all thine increase of thy seed, that the field bringeth forth year by year." So there was a rule for the Israelites. This is really more like a tax that God is setting apart the Levites and the priest in order to serve him, and so they need to have some kind of funding to survive, them and their families. And so all the other tribes are going to take a tenth of what they grow, whether that's corn, whether that's wine, whether that's the increase of their cattle, and they're going to bring it to the spot where God chooses, which was first is going to be Shiloh, later it's going to be Jerusalem. So, here the tithing, what's that mean? It means a tenth. All right, taking a tenth of all that they grow, and they're going to bring it. Now, this isn't before the days of flatbeds. There are not great roads. It would be very difficult to physically load up all the grain that you've grown, all the wine that you produced, all the oil, all the firstlings of your flocks and herds, and transport it. You're going to have to go to the spot where God's going to choose. He hasn't told them where it is yet, right? They haven't even come into the land. We're still on the far side of Jordan. It says, "Thou shalt eat before the Lord thy God in the place where he shall choose to place his name there." So again, initially Shiloh, later Jerusalem. "The tithe, the tenth of your corn," which is not like Indian corn. That's like your grains, your wheat, your barley. "Of thy wine, of thy oil," that's your olive oil, your olives that have been pressed into oil, "and the firstling of thy herds and of thy flocks, that thou mayest learn to fear the Lord thy God always." So you're to take the tenth, you're to go, and you're to celebrate and have a feast there, and you're giving the rest of the way to Levites. The reason is that you learn to fear God. Where did all that come from? He gave it to you. So you're acknowledging it with this feast of gratitude. Right? So verse 24 says, "And if the way be too long for thee, so that thou art not able to carry it, or if the place be too far from me, which the Lord thy God shall choose to set his name, when the Lord thy God hath blessed thee, here's what you do." All right, it's too far. You can't haul all this stuff. The freight's too difficult. Then you're going to turn it into money. All right, we got an exchange. You were to sell the stuff, but that money is all set aside. You're to bind it up in thy hand. You're not to, put it into your general treasury. You're to take it, and then you're to go to the place where the Lord thy God shall choose. Right, it's much easier to carry a purse than to carry, cows and sheep and bales of hay and whatnot. "And you shall bestow thy money for whatsoever thy soul lusteth after." All right, so the exchange from goods to money has to go back again. You got to exchange the money back into goods. He says it doesn't matter what you get, whatever you want, that's fine. Ox, sheep, wine, strong drink, whatever thy soul desireth, you're allowed to, and you're going to have that feast the same as if you brought all your stuff directly. And you're going to eat it there before the Lord thy God. Now, are you going to consume all a tenth of your year's proceeds in one feast? No, it'd be impossible, right? But you're going to take and enjoy that portion of it, and the rest is going to be given to the priests and the Levites. So you're going to eat it there before the Lord thy God, and thou shalt rejoice, thou and thy household. So you're not to go by yourself. Bring your wife, bring your kids, bring your household. And if you have any Levites that are living in your dwelling, in your gates, in your cities, you don't forget him. You bring him along too. Thou shalt not forsake him, for he hath no part nor inheritance with you. Right? The Levite doesn't have his own crops and fields to take all this from and come celebrate. He's dependent upon the Lord, and so you bring him along on this journey. You fund his way. You allow him to participate with you. All right. "At the end of 3 years thou shalt bring forth all the tithe of thine increase the same year, and lay it up within thy gates. And the Levite, because he hath no part or inheritance with thee, and the stranger and the fatherless and widow, which are within thy gates, shall come and eat and be satisfied, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the work of thy hand which thou doest." All right, so this tenth up here was every year you had to do this. This is something that's happening every third year. you're going to bring all of your increase of the same year and lay it up within your gates. So it looks like there is a provision for the local poor being used here in addition to what was going on before. And those who need access to to help in the food, they're going to have access to it because of this local provision within your city. So if everybody every 3 years is contributing a tenth of what they grow, then you've got the Levite who doesn't have a part, and the strangers who obviously they're passing through where they don't own any land there. Those whose fathers have passed and aren't able to produce the same way. Widows whose husbands are gone. God is here providing for these people that they can not only have something that day, but to continue to eat. In addition to the other ways that he provides for them, such as not harvesting the corn or the crops, or going after gleaning a field a second time. So there's this last promise out here. If you're doing those things, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the work of thy hand which thou doest. Right? So these promises that he's made were conditional upon them continuing to follow through and doing it his way. Right? Do many humans voluntarily say, you know what, I've got all this, I would like to take a tenth of it every year and give it away. And give it away to people who aren't working as hard as I am. Or aren't even related to me, or not even citizens of our country, right? He's saying that to that nation, if you want me to continue to bless all of your physical crops and your cattle and the rains, because all those things he had promised, literally he promised to them, but it was conditioned on them doing it his way. And so if they do these things where it really doesn't make human sense, but God says this is pleasing to me, it says he continues to bless them. Well, the inverse is true, that when they disobey him and they start trying to amass up riches for themselves rather than obeying him, he starts kind of cutting off the faucet where rain is shut off, and the increase in growth of their crops and cattle is not to the same extent. So this Old Testament covenant and promises to this nation of Israel were very much conditioned on as long as they obeyed. And Moses earlier, this had already said, I know you're not going to obey, and I know eventually God's going to kick you out of this land, but these are the things that you do to extend your time, right? To continue. If you've ever been doing a little race car game at the arcade where you got that 30 seconds, and if you get to the next checkpoint, you get a little bit more time, another 10 or 15 seconds, right? It's kind of like that. You continue to obey, you can extend it out a little bit farther, but eventually they were going to be removed from the land. So that's Deuteronomy chapter 14.